The funeral of the Earl of Stockton, the former Prime Minister Harold Macmillan, takes place later this morning in the Sussex village of Horsted Canes.
The tiny parish church of St Giles is expected to be packed with friends and relatives of the Macmillan family who've lived in the village since the 1920s. With Mrs Thatcher and former Prime Ministers expected, security is strict and sniffer dogs trained to find explosives were hard at work in the graveyard first thing this morning. Following the service, at which the address will be given by the Bishop of Chichester, Lord Stockton will be laid to rest just before 1 o'clock in the family plot alongside his wife, Lady Dorothy, who died in 1966.
The next news is at 12 o'clock.
Good morning. Time to have a look a little further afield at conditions over Europe. On the satellite picture, you can see really rather a lot of quite thick cloud over northern Europe and over Scandinavia too. Quite a bit of snow beneath that cloud as well. Whereas I think you can see very much thinner, more broken cloud down over Iberia and over the Mediterranean. Conditions, well, crossings first of all to get there. The English Channel is only moderate, but the rest of the sea passages, I'm afraid, are thoroughly rough. The winds are gale force in many northern and western parts of the country. And there's a position over Europe today. Northwest Europe, that includes the Low Countries, Denmark, France and Britain, sunshine and showers. But over Scandinavia, apart from Denmark that is, and over Central and Eastern Europe, a lot of cloud, periods of snow, sub-zero temperatures. Now, Southern Europe, that's Iberia and the Mediterranean, here much better conditions, mainly dry, some sunshine, but the eastern basin of the Mediterranean is still very unsettled and very showery. And those are the temperatures. Now, a line from Copenhagen to Berlin marks the edge of the really cold weather, which is affecting northern, central and eastern Europe. But south and west of that, much milder, as you can see. The Canaries, once again, getting a reasonable 18 Celsius, 64 degrees Fahrenheit. Back at home, here we are, a mixture of sunshine and showers for most of us. Not all that very many showers in southern and eastern Britain, but it is a breezy day and rather a cold day everywhere. Those are the computer predictions of the winds at 3 p.m. this afternoon. As you can see, gale force in the north and in the west as well, and pretty strong everywhere else too. Those are the temperatures we expect this afternoon, a straight range from 5 in the north, 41 Fahrenheit, to 7 or 8 in the south, 45 to 46 degrees Fahrenheit, but with the wind that will feel very much on the cold side everywhere. Looking forward to tonight, well, skies clearing, a few showers around the coast in the north and in the west and in the east, but skies clearing inland. There will be a touch of frost, I think, in many places, but most roads, I think, should be dry by tomorrow morning. Tomorrow sees the start of a change to much colder weather later on in the day. Most of it starting off dry and bright, but later on in the day, snow and sleet coming into eastern parts of England and Scotland, and that does mark the start of several days of rather cold weather for us all, I'm afraid. So a change taking place in the weather to colder weather later tomorrow and tomorrow evening.
Now it's time on BBC1 to take a day out in the West Country with Angela Rippon.
Symonds Yat in the north of Gloucestershire lies on a U-bend in the River Wye, and it's within hailing distance of the Welsh border. It's also a wonderful place to get lost in.
Good morning, welcome to the maze.
Thank you, good morning.
Let me tell you just a little bit about it before you set off on this minor expedition. This puzzle was planted in Jubilee year by myself and my brother. It's one of the larger labyrinths in Britain, but do not despair. It's rather more fun than frustrating. Its centre is marked by a stone temple where there are some seats where you may sit and rest. So the way in is by the bench seat just over there. Good luck and have fun.
Thank you.
Off you go.
Well, let's hope it doesn't take too long, because I'd quite like to see the rest of Symonds Yat today. Come on.
Well, Edward Hayes may have his doubts, but his brother Lindsay, what a perfect gentleman.
Good idea.
There you are.
Now I'll turn right here. And here? No.
Do you know where you're going?
Yes, where?
I think I
trying to find the middle.
Where's the middle?
Over there.
Right, I'll follow you.
Oh, God, it's up this way.
Oh, I thought you said you knew where you were going. Ah, this is it. No, it isn't. Obviously, Lindsay enjoys watching people making fools of themselves.
I don't know where she is.
Do you know where you're going?
No. You're lost.
You're lost?
Yeah.
Oh, I think I'll go this way then. I'll speak to you later. It's all very well for you lot. Well, at least Lindsay knows where I'm going, even if I don't.
Come and sit down.
Lindsay, as somebody who designed this maze, what's the background to mazes?
Well, they started really, about 5,000 years ago, possibly longer. People say that they might have come from India or certainly the Mediterranean. And really they started out as a dance floor. And people drew them like this. They would, in fact, they didn't draw them. They laid them out in pebbles on the ground. And they'd start by drawing a cross in the middle and then marking out 4 stones like that. And then they would just draw lines like these ones, which would join up the dots and the cross in such a way that they had their dance floor. It's a very complicated dance. You had to dance it in a chain. The Romans made it even more complicated because they did it on horseback. But it is the oldest recorded dance in which men and women dance together. And it would magically protect the threshold of life and death. So it was danced in fertility rites and also at funerals. And it was also done by Christians as an Easter dance, right up to 1690, quite recent.
Lindsay, there are no dead ends in the original maze, so how did they come to be incorporated in the puzzle?
Just for fun. People started building them in their gardens, and they thought it would be great fun to play a joke on each other. And that's what mazes are. They're jokes. They're for playing games in them. Not for treading reverently around, as some people say you should, but racing around and enjoying yourself.
But there are 12 ways to the centre, aren't there?
That's right. And you better get going and see if you can find them all.
Yes, I haven't found one yet.
Tough luck.
Now, you see, if I were her size, I could always crawl underneath the hedges to find the middle. I think I'll settle for a night on a white charger. Ah, here's one. Do you know where you are? You do? Oh, I'll follow you then, all right. Hello?
Oh, that's the umbrella.
I thought you knew where you were going. Now, I've always been a great believer in the proverb that if at first you don't succeed, try again. Well, I tried, and I tried, and I've made it! Well, after you've had a good rest in the temple at the centre of the maze, you can always pop next door and enter another world. A world of butterflies flying free in the tropical environment of a large greenhouse. It's a world of colour and beauty, created by Barry Jones. Symonds Yat gets its most unusual name from the Old English word yat, meaning a gate or pass, while Symonds is thought to refer to Robert Symonds, who was High Sheriff of Herefordshire in the 17th century.
Just under the Severn Bridge. Which is Parish Church, you see on the left-hand bank here, Symonds Yat, being in the parish of Whitchurch. It's very nearly 700 years old. The first service was held there in 1289, and it's still in use.
Tony Jenkins is the man on the microphone, and his colleague at the wheel is Mac Adam. They're just two of the many boatmen who work on the River Wye, which really is the very heart of Symonds Yat.
200 years ago, during the age of romantic tourism, it was very fashionable to do the tour of the Wye Valley. And one of the highlights of that tour was always a trip down the River Wye from Ross to Chepstow. Well, one of the most famous of those tourists must have been Admiral Lord Nelson, who, no doubt, seeing all these wonderfully wooded valleys, eventually organised the timber trade here to provide wood for the ships of the British Navy. Well, these days, I'm afraid only short stretches of the river are really navigable by motorboat. But even on a very short trip like this, it's very easy to drink in the atmosphere and the beauty of the place, and to actually realise just why it is that this has been so popular with tourists for so long.
Surprisingly, the tourist today enjoys far more picturesque surroundings than he would have done in Nelson's time. In the early 19th century, this whole area was an industrial heartland, and Symonds Yat possessed what was arguably one of the best iron forges in England. Who would have believed that this was once a scene of refuse heaps and furnaces, belching smoke to the monotonous beating of tilt hammers? The iron was transported down the river by barge, and at this point the barge horses were ferried to the other side on this strange contraption. Now only two of them remain, and they're both in Symonds Yat.
Way up there, tucked in behind those trees, is Symonds Yat Rock, and as you can imagine, the views from the top are absolutely magnificent. Just think, looking down on this river, these boats look like little toys, really.
The poet Wordsworth regularly visited the area, and, as you might expect, he penned a few suitable lines, including these. Once again do I behold these steep and lofty cliffs that on a wild, secluded scene impress thoughts of more deep seclusion and connect the landscape with the quiet of the sky. Thoughts that must ring just as true today for the many people who still come to Symonds Yat Valley.
Well, I'm now standing up on Symonds Yat Rock, which is a very popular place for the tourists in the area to come, because you really do get the most fabulous view of the Wye Valley from here. But also, as a bonus, you get another view as well, because over there, on that sheer rock face, a pair of peregrine falcons have made their nest. And in fact, today, we're very fortunate because, yes, one of the birds is actually on site. Now, the RSPB official who's responsible for this whole area, and therefore also for those birds, is Carl Nicholson. Carl, how unusual is it to have a pair of peregrines nesting in this valley?
Oh, it's quite unusual. They came nesting here 4 years ago. And before that, there'd been an absence of over 30 years. So it's a traditional site, and it's indicative of the spread of peregrine falcons. They're not now as rare as they used to be, and they've nearly got back to their pre-war levels. We've got about 800 pairs nesting in the country now. And as you see today, we've actually got the female sitting out there on site, giving quite good views. Pretty lazy, she's been there for 4 hours, but nevertheless, it's very good when you're trying to show birds to people.
And it is marvellous, isn't it, for people to be able to come here in their hundreds and look across at that site?
Well, I mean, to this site, you can get, what, 500 to 1,000 people a day coming here, and they've come to see the nice view, but of course their visit is enhanced by suddenly being aware that they can see peregrine falcons.
And what a wonderful way to see them too.
Well, to me, it is the way to see the birds. I mean, not manacled to somebody's wrist, but flying wild and free. OK, they sit there for a long time and they're a bit boring from that point of view. But when the nests have been successful and you've got the young birds flying up and down here and the parent birds trying to teach them how to catch their prey, perhaps sometimes the parent birds drop the pigeon that they've caught, and then the birds have to fly after it and catch it before it reaches the ground. And all this happens from this grandstand view of Symonds Yat Rock. So it's really superb.
Flying is certainly an easier way of getting around Symonds Yat Rock than this.
Where should I put my hands, Matthew?
It's as good a place as any, actually, and sort of lean away from the handholds.
Give a tug.
Climbing, for some reason quite unknown to me, is an extremely popular pursuit in this area.
Now where?
And then you just sort of work your way up.
I don't have any fingernails left after this one.
Look where it's sort of shiny. It's obviously, that's where the handholds are. Everybody else has used them.
There are many rocks and cliff faces of varying degrees of difficulty waiting to be scaled, and Matthew Neal is the man who's agreed to give me a lesson.
In here?
So, yeah, you want to eventually get your feet into the crack.
Oh, there?
Yes. Get your feet high enough so you can reach this handhold and that handhold.
I've often wondered what it must feel like to climb Everest with the team precariously linked together by a piece of rope, all at the tender mercy of Mother Nature. Well, now I know.
Right. Onwards.
Where are we going to put our feet?
Go to waist level. Or you can see there are either a stick on the string. They will stay on the sloping rock if you're confident enough to believe it.
Now where do I have to get my other hand?
Up on here, if you can.
Here?
Mm-hmm.
Can't pull myself up.
I
really can't.
I'll give you a bit of a help.
I can't get up, honestly. Let me go back again.
Little jerks just where my...
Hang on, let me find where to put my foot.
It's no secret, I have never been so terrified in all my life. But then if your day out in Symonds Yat isn't complete without doing an impersonation of a human fly, take a tip from me, do it with an expert.
There we go.
Right, good.
One more.
Okay, best place to stand?
You mean to tell me that's one of the nursery slopes?
It's fairly easy.
And do people actually come and do this in their thousands for a weekend at Symonds Yat?
Yes.
Goodrich Castle was built in Norman times as a defence against Welsh raiders. The 12th century grey stone keep is the oldest part, and the spectacular outer sandstone walls were added some 150 years later. The defences were so sound that Goodrich was one of the last royalist castles to fall to the Roundheads during the Civil War. It was finally besieged by Colonel Birch, who forced the royalists to submit by using a great mortar known as Roaring Meg. There's rather a sad story connected with the siege. Apparently Colonel Birch's daughter, Alice, fell in love with a young cavalier called Charles Gifford. She managed to join him inside the beleaguered fortress, but when the castle was forced to surrender, the lovers made their escape through the Roundhead lines on horseback. They plunged into the flooded Wye below and drowned. And they do say that their screams can still be heard above the noise of the river on stormy nights. This is certainly an area of great contrasts. After that sandstone splendour of Goodrich Castle, in these more homely surroundings, there are artefacts made out of concrete, a thriving family business. If you want a garden gnome or a piece of statuary or a nice urn to put some flowers in, well, this is obviously the place to come. It's on the Doward, which is a hill overlooking the Wye. It's also actually the home of the most extraordinary collection of agricultural implements that I've ever seen. Ploughs, wagons, potato risers, muck spreaders, they're just some of the items of horse-drawn equipment that are displayed here, all in a wonderfully haphazard way, outside on the grass or inside in barns and in sheds. There are some 60 tractors in the collection dating from 1917, and there are road rollers, engines, and even early lawnmowers. Much of the machinery has been restored to working order, like this wonderful old thresher.
Makes incredible noise, Derek.
It is a bit noisy, yeah. That's where the corn is bagged out when it's thrashed. That is the main drive to the thrashing drum. That's the blower for the chaff. There have been pipes connected to that to blow the chaff outside of the working area. That's the straw walkers. The straw came out of the back of there and either into an elevator or into a straw tyre.
They look like prize fighters, don't they, when they're doing that? They are amazing machines. How long ago since this one was used?
Last year. For cleaning grain. It wasn't used actually thrashing corn, but it was used to clean grain, the seed.
Isn't it splendid? And this living museum houses a wealth of domestic bygones as well.
Oh, I don't think I'd fancy working in this sort of kitchen anymore. What on earth is this?
This is an early box mangle. It's about 1890 thereabouts, we believe. It was used mainly in big laundries. Stones were put in the box to provide the weight, and the clothes were wrapped around the rollers which are underneath the box.
And then the weight of it would just push over the clothes and squash all the water out.
That's right.
Gosh, that was hard work, I should think, wasn't it, working in the laundry in those days?
Most big estates had a handyman come in one day a week to do their laundry.
Oh, he earned his pay, I should think, that day, too.
That's a small pressure cooker.
Not surprised they used to blow up if they looked like that. And this?
That is a small stove used in laundries of larger houses. Coal fire inside. It's for the laundry mates to do the ironing.
Oh.
And all the irons come in different sizes.
Oh, yes. Use it as paper.
I think from 1 to 10.
You must have more mangles in here than a Chinese laundry.
Yes, I think so. That's the old dolly tub.
Derek and his father Eric started the collection about 10 years ago, and now it's one of the largest of its kind in the country. All the family muck in, including the grandsons, painstakingly restoring and maintaining the exhibits.
Eric, you and Derek are the closest I've ever come to meeting two human squirrels. How many bits and pieces have you got here?
Oh, I couldn't tell you. I couldn't. Not the least idea. Not the least. Never tried. Well, we did once try to count them, but we got so far, then more stuff came in, and we forgot all about it.
Tell us about the machine that Derek's driving on now.
That was a reaper we bought in Lincolnshire. Terrible condition, rusty. I never thought it would ever go again. It was last used by Coleman's Mustard for cutting mustard. Suddenly Derek said he thought he would rebuild it, and you can see it now.
And you do go to a lot of trouble to rebuild everything.
Oh yes, oh yes, it is a lot. We get everything. We don't get it smart. We don't want it to be smart and polished up and all that. We want it to be back in its original condition, as it used to work.
And this is the essence of the unique charm of Eric and Derek's museum. The past is magically brought to life, and we're all transported into a world of splendid machinery waltzing before our eyes. Now, forget about petrol power. To enjoy Symonds Yat at its best, just go back to nature. In fact, most people do come here simply to walk and to immerse themselves in the beauty of the landscape. About 100 acres of the surrounding woods are looked after by the Nature Conservancy Council. The vegetation is left untouched by man. There's no clearing and no planting, and everything is logged meticulously to trace the genuine ecological development of the reserve. To help the visitors get the most out of Symonds Yat and neighbouring High Meadow Woods, the Ramblers Association, with the assistance of the Forestry Commission, have created waymarked paths, and the Forestry Commission itself has provided many nature trails. And you'll often come across some interesting landmarks.
This monster is called the Suckstone. It's arguably the largest boulder in the kingdom. It obviously weighs thousands and thousands of tons, and it's said to be a marker on a ley line, you know, one of those pagan communication routes.
The Suckstone is just one of many spectacular stones in High Meadow Woods, and it can take hours to see them all. There's the Staunton Longstone that's supposed to bleed if you prick it at exactly midnight on the summer solstice. Two others once aided gamekeepers in their hunt for poachers by picking up and reflecting the slightest sound. But there's one that I find more compelling than any of the others.
Before it was cemented into place, the Buckstone there used to rock. And the ancient Britons believed that it had magical properties as a result. For instance, they thought that if you walked around it 3 times, you'd have your wish granted. Or better still, if you were to actually touch it, then you'd be forgiven all your sins, especially if beforehand you'd anointed yourself with holy dew taken from this little rock pool. Actually, on a more practical basis, they had another use for the stone as well. They used it as a warning for the people who lived in the valley to tell them of approaching enemies. What they would do is rock the stone backwards and forwards, and the deep rumbling noise would reverberate down through the valley and warn those people who were trained to know what to listen for. This is the only bridge there is at Symonds Yat, and in spite of the fact that it looks so flimsy, I'm told it's perfectly safe. There's only one way to find out, isn't there? Incidentally, just over there is a piece of land with a rather gruesome title of the Slaughter. As you might expect, there are all sorts of theories as to how it got that name. One of them is that that was the site of the last stand made by the British chieftain Caractacus against the Romans. Another story says that it was where King Alfred's son, Edward, led a battle against the Danish army that was led by Eric of the Bloody Axe. And of course, yet another theory says that it was the scene of a particularly bloody skirmish between Cavaliers and Roundheads during the Civil War. Well, frankly, I think they're all wrong.
I think this is why it's called the Slaughter. And I hope I have a bit more luck than that chap, because I'm just about to have my first ever canoeing lesson. Looks a bit rough, doesn't it?
Off we go.
Hands right, are they?
Yes, good.
Fortunately, I'm in the capable hands of Graham Symonds. No relation to the Symonds of Symonds Yat, incidentally.
Try to control the angle of the boat into the wind.
And so, onwards to the rapids.
Let's go. Stick the ball through.
Just beginning to
Go to your
hit
left a little bit. Go to
first
your
of
left.
the rough water.
Go to your left.
Feel the current pulling me.
your boat up. Great. Smash it.
Well, that wasn't as difficult as I thought it was going to be. In fact, to be honest, it was really exhilarating. You know, I can quite understand how it is that people get addicted to this sport. I think I'll have another go.
Here we go, last one. Keep your boat straight, Angela. Keep your boat straight. Relax, relax. Here we go. Keep paddling, keep paddling. That's right. Well done. Woo. That's it.
You get a lot of people coming here, Graham, for lessons on the Wye?
Yes, thousands actually. It's probably the only section of rapid around, and it's a very accessible river. And it's a very safe river as well.
Once you're actually on the River Wye, you get a completely different perspective of Symonds Yat from that of the climber or the walker. But really, whether you're on land or water, it's certainly a smashing place to visit.